Hello, hello. Can you hear me
Oh,
okay, Jennifer?
I can hear you.
Got a weird message. There was another Zoom meeting happening. I hope I didn't cancel something else that Karen was doing.
That'll be interesting. I saw that message too.
Oh, you did? All right.
Yeah.
Huh. It's kind of strange. It's the first time we've had that happen.
Yeah.
In
Could she
fact, that
be on
Karen was
another
not.
Zoom meeting?
Oh, absolutely. She is beyond busy.
Mm-hmm.
Our Attorney General, potential future governor of North Carolina, stopped here in Asheville today for the union protests at HCA,
Mm.
and that created an additional flurry.
Mm-hmm. So is it just a protest? It's not a strike at this point?
Correct. I'm not aware of it being a strike. Karen will have some more insights when she comes in. Um,
Mm. Is it patient staff ratios
oh,
or
absolutely. At the expense of absolutely incredible profits. It's since HCA bought it out, I think it's like the number two, number three most profitable HCA hospital.
mm.
So very, very sad. There's Karen. Hello,
Hi.
hello.
Got it.
Jennifer and I both got a strange Zoom message, but
How
there
are
was
you
another
all? How are y'all doing?
doing good.
Good. How you doing,
we got
Jennifer?
I'm doing okay. We got a message that you were on another Zoom meeting.
It was so kind of stupid because I went to start it as the host and it kicked me out. It just stopped. So then I tried 2 or 3 times to get in and I finally got in. So anyway,
Okay.
it's all good.
Good.
Sometimes Mark starts first and sometimes I start first. And anyway, it's all good, whatever. How's your father, Jennifer?
He's doing okay. We got him home last Friday. He was very weak, so I've had to double up team members for his care. We had 10 with an 11th kind of substituting, and now I think we're up to 15.
Mm.
So, um, he's just been very, very weak, and it takes at least 2 people to get him from the chair
Ooh,
to his wheelchair.
ooh.
And then we've got a bar by his bedside. So he's stronger with his arms, but his legs don't like to listen, um, because of the Parkinson's sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Did a couple more interviews today of people who can substitute. So that's good.
Oh, so is he staying at your house? Where's he staying?
Yeah, he lives with us.
Okay, I got you.
When we had an addition built on the house when my mom was diagnosed with cancer and my dad's Parkinson's wasn't doing well. So we made everything handicap accessible and we put bars and grab bars and all kinds of things in different places. And we were lucky enough this past week to get a hold of a Hoyer lift.
Oh, goody.
So if we need that, you know,
No kidding.
yeah.
That's so good that you got a Hoyer lift. That's the best thing ever.
Yeah, one of
Mm.
my caregivers actually had one that one of her clients had but never had the chance to use before he passed. And
Wow.
so they just gave it to her and we actually unwrapped it. It's a couple years old, but it's got a remote control, it's electric. So
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
how lovely.
very
Remote
nice.
control. We love that.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad he's doing a little better for you and
Yeah,
your
me too.
family.
I'm glad that I've onboarded more people. I
Yeah,
had to call into work sick last Friday or Saturday because I didn't have a second person. Um, so I just, my team was already stretched
yeah.
doing what they could. So
Well, God bless them that they're helping you out,
mhm.
you know. It's very sweet.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. We worked on getting a recliner chair for my stepdad.
Mm.
He's having a hard time, like with the transition from bed to standing or standing to sitting, sitting to standing. Every
Did
chair
you
we seem to have in this house moves, like it's a rocker or a swivel. It's not so, so besides dining room chairs. So we went
did you
out
get
and
one that will actually lift him up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
yeah,
That's good.
yep.
I
Yeah.
had a
The
friend
things
who
we
just,
learn.
yeah, I had a friend who just had major cardiac surgery. She's 78 and she went to Lazy Boy and got a deluxe chair with a remote, and
Yeah.
it lifts up, it tilts down, it raises her feet, it raises, it just does everything. So she stayed in that chair for about her 4 weeks after she got out of the rehab facility, and she's finally gotten back in her bed. So it's been
Wow.
Right
kind of a
on.
progression. Mm-hmm.
I know it's a bold move
Mm-hmm.
to lay down straight,
Mm-hmm.
just strain everywhere. That's the
Mm-hmm.
hardest transition.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Quite something. How are you
Yeah.
doing, Liz?
You mean Lisa?
I mean, Lisa. I'm looking at Liz and calling Lisa Liz. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, how are you?
Wait a minute, you broke up.
All good?
All good. All good. Okay.
I said, all good. How are you?
I'm good. I went to my funeral last week in Richmond, and I was saying maybe I could get to see you guys, but I couldn't get away. There's too many family members and it just wasn't able. So maybe the next time in Richmond, I'll give you all a holler sooner versus later.
Hopefully it'll be a better time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you have a funeral, everyone comes from all over the place, and so you gotta, you just have to stay put and let them all come. So it's all good. Sabrina and Matthew, how are you all doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, good. How you doing, Mark?
We're doing fine, doing fine. Jennifer and I were talking about HCA and Josh Stein being in town. Eager to hear any updates that you might have.
Oh, I took a whole bunch of pictures today. I was there at 7:15 with all of the nurses union people. And so it was me and two other physicians from this coalition. And so I talked to as many as I could and asked them how they were doing. They were all doing terrible. So, you know, but they were out there with their signage, and then the Attorney General came, so that was great. So that was hopeful. He's in one of those big black Suburbans, that the president is driving in, and he had a escort. So I wondered if it was bomb proof or rocket proof or rifle proof. I assumed that it must be, but the nurses were all real tame and glad to have him, and I was glad to see him too. So it was a good showing. It was good. I'll show a few pictures maybe sometime, maybe right after class, but The union nurses are asking for dinner breaks and breaks and more money. And they will probably not get any of that. So then it means striking. And then if they strike, HCA has already got an allowance of $150 per hour for something like 180 nurses. So we'll see what happens. They have a strike fund. How nice. Okay. Well, let's begin. So let's check in. Hi, Sonia. How you doing? So Lisa
Having
Nowicki's.
issues again.
Hi, how are you? So Lisa Nowicki is not feeling well. She won't be with us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Okay, so let's check in. So Jennifer, what about you? Oh, wait a minute. I have to say what we're going to check in as. Let's check in as a bird tonight. Do you want to wait a minute? You want me to wait a minute and ask someone else since I
I feel
started?
like we've all been a lot of birds. Can we pick something else?
Yes, I could say you could check in as a snake, but I'm just looking outside thinking what else can I check in? We could check in as a flower. There you go. Okay. Okay, Jennifer. What flower are you tonight?
I'm gonna check in as my hydrangea that is finally blooming for the first time, I think in 6 or 7 years.
Ooh,
It bloomed the first year I put it, and they were small little tiny things, and now it is huge. I don't think I could I don't think you would be able to see it if I showed the picture, but it's pinks and kind of blues, and it's huge. And let's see.
woo, it is huge.
I don't know
Pinks
if you
and
can
blues.
see it. I'm
Yes,
getting a lot
it
of
is.
but anyway,
It's a big one.
yeah. So that's what I'm gonna go for.
Okay, goody. Okay, Liz, what about you?
I'll go for the Jolly Pansy because they're purple and delightful.
They're purple and delightful. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Lisa Seeds, what about you?
I think I'm gonna check in as a daffodil. They were my dad's favorite.
Oh,
And they're usually one of the first ones to bloom here in Virginia. Sometimes they pop up out of the snow like the crocuses do, but I'm always sad when they go away.
okay, thank you. All right, Matthew.
Well, I just rolled in from Santa Fe and I was doing visits with patients at their houses today, and the roses in Santa Fe are just incredible right now. Everything's just bolting. We have a heat wave and just huge, big roses. So I'm going to have to go with that today.
Totally great. Thank you. Okay, Sonia, what about you?
I'm gonna go with the sunflower. Just because they're tall, strong, and they shine big.
And shine big. Okay, totally great. Okay, Serena.
This time I'm gonna go with an amaryllis because I was talking to someone recently how I own a plant hospice, and there are things that are transitioning. But one of the things that I love about an amaryllis is the last time I got one dying from a grocery store, it lived without me doing anything. And I think that's a sign of resilience. And I'm all about resilience.
I like that you are a plant hospice. I like that. I think that way sometime too.
I'm
That's
working on
awesome.
it.
That's
working
totally
on it.
great. Okay, Mark, what are you?
I'm not real sure. Answer. I need some help and tell me what kind of flower that is.
I'll tell you, it's a crook neck something. I have to think about it for a minute. That's a
I think
great
it's
picture.
is that a lilac?
Say that
No, it's
again.
not a lilac.
It's not?
It's it's not that, but, wait a
They're
minute,
they're
let's,
starting to bloom. This is a picture I took last year and did some photography magic, and it's just a powerful flower. But my favorite flower is a peony.
okay, cool. That's great. Well, that's a beautiful picture you've got against the black background. It's called a loose strife. That's what it's called. And it's very, how should we put it? Pervasive, not invasive, but those little flowers all have seed pods and has about 1 million. And we have 1 million in the yard down where Mark lives in the apartment. So they're going to run him out of there if he's not careful. So I'm going to be a milkweed, and I have 3 potted milkweeds. They're really hard to transplant. A lot of you know that milkweeds are the only flower that monarch butterflies like. So I was inspired at my aunt's funeral because my sister planted milkweeds in the spring of last year, and then they spread like wildfire, and she has like a milkweed forest. And in September, she had hundreds of butterflies up in the trees and monarchs. And so I'm going to go out there and plant 3 tomorrow. And they're blooming. They have little tiny pink flowers. So yeah. All right. Well, congratulations. We got through another checking in with flowers. All right. Okay, so I am going to do the first hour, and then Jeremy Noble is going to do the second one. So I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to come down here. Okay, and we're going to start here. So tonight we're going to talk about networking, and we're going to talk about RN patient advocacy forms, because when you start your own private practice, you want to have some forms, and I'm giving you all of my forms so you don't have to start from scratch. So maybe tomorrow I will send you copies of all of these, but first we're going to talk about networking. So we're going to talk about how to be an exceptional networker. And we're going to look at 4 types. Actually, there's 5, and that would be professional networking, business, community, and your friends or your passions. And so first we're going to start out with professionals. So I'm going to go with about 3 types of networking. Then I'm going to go into breakout groups and ask you all, what are your favorite types of networking? So for professional, my husband Greg is a past hospice nurse. So he belongs to the National Association Palliative Association, National Hospice Palliative Association. I'm a member of the American Holistic Nurse Association. And then there's something called AACN, which is the Assisted Living Director of Nurses and Communities. And then this is from some of the students in the past. We had a student last year who belonged to AACN, which is Association for Cardiac and Pulmonary Nursing. And then LinkedIn is a biggie. And if all of you need to be in LinkedIn, even if you just start small with your bio or your resume. So this is where Jan Nickerson comes in. If you don't have a resume, make a free appointment with her and she'll help you craft one. And then from the resume, she will create a bio for you. So we'll keep going here for a minute. So my other one is the North Carolina Nurse Association. That's part of ANA. So a lot of you know, if you belong to NCNA, that you automatically get a subscription to ANA. And Greg is a member of the International Association of Near-Death Studies because he had a near-death experience when he was 15. And he's a member of Heart Math, and he was a member of the Conscious Dying Institute, but now he's a member of the Conscious Living and Dying place. And now, so there's business networking. So businesses, that would be directly related to your work. as RN patient advocates. So there are approximately 4 national patient advocacy organizations, and they are ALCA, which is the grandmother. It's the Aging Life Care Association. It's $325. It's kind of pricey. The reason I like they have a big national conference, which is coming up, I think, in the middle of June. And I've never been to the ALCA National Conference, but we have a local ALCA group here. So it's people from Hendersonville and Asheville and around our region. And so they're not just nurses, they could be social workers or other types of care managers, but it's good to be networking. The second one is the National Association of Healthcare Advocates. Let me go back to ALCA. When you belong to ALCA, you can sign into a listserv, and if someone calls you, like Sabrina lives in Arkansas, but suppose someone sees her amazing website from Seattle, Washington, and they say, I want help with assisted dying with a physician, and she could look up in the ALCA website to Washington State and see if she could find a patient advocate that could help with assisted dying. National Association of Healthcare Advocates, they also charge $325. I don't belong to them. There's also the Alliance of Professional Health Advocates. They have something called Advo Connection. They charge $289. Advo Connection is free. So that's the second listserv I go into. I'll go into ALCA looking for somebody in Washington State. I'll go into Advo Connection to find someone. And then there's the Greater National Advocates. That's www.gnanow.org. That was started by the man who had amputations of his hands and his feet, and he's an attorney, and he does this as a life work thing. So I check about 3 of these 4. And you're going to need to be able to do that if people call you to say, I need some help. So other things for business, we've talked about the Aging Life Care Association. We've talked about SCORE. There are small business centers in our community colleges. I usually subscribe to them. I'm a big member of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. I spelled Asheville twice. And we talked about you all maybe enlisting or looking at your OLLI chapters. They offer a lot of free classes or different things, and it's a great community. Then there's something called the National Nurses in Business, and I'm going to show you about their national meeting, which is coming up in July, I think. They have this National Nurse of Business National Conference. It used to be in September. Now they moved it to July. And we have our local North Carolina Nurse Association, and the Blue Ridge Holistic Nurse Association is a child of the bigger American Holistic Nurse Association. And then I'm also a graduate of Leadership Asheville. So these are kind of my main business networking groups. So this is the conference of the National Nurses in Business Association, and it's from July 25th to 27th. And what I'm going to do, it says innovative strategies for developing nursing business opportunities. So I'm probably going to take, I'm stopping sharing for a minute. I'm probably going to take a pre-conference. So you'll see conference description, hotel, conference. It's near Disney World in Kissimmee, Florida. And here's the pre-conferences. So I wanted to show you that it's kind of expensive. Let's see. It's in Kissimmee, Florida. It is $409 for 2 days for members, and $509 for non-members. And pre-conferences are $99 for members and $129 for non-members. So I'm probably going to do a pre-conference, but I just wanted to show you the agendas for these 2 days. This is the woman who she started it. Let's see. That's a picture, Michelle Podlesny. She started nurses, National Nurses in Business. But this is the keynote, the journey of building business through storytelling. Then there's breakouts, tapping into your entrepreneurial spirit, creating accessible coaching, limitless beyond the bedside as a business owner, from posting to profits. This person's how to start, scale, and build your staffing company, transforming your money mindset as a nurse entrepreneur, presenting with polish and passion. Then the next day is the founder. Then the other topics are how to become a profitable nurse writer, how to leverage digital content, from risk to reality, major announcements, plans for next year. And then pre-conferences are building consulting packages that convert, 10 ways to start your side hustle and your nursing expertise, A to Z, starting your nurse-owned business, and how to build a caregiving empire. So the one I'm interested in is maybe building consulting packages that convert. So I wanted to show you all that, just so you can kind of know how this thing works. Any questions about NNBA? Okay. So we're down here. Now we're going to come back and play from this current slide. So what about community networking? So there's lots of causes in each of your communities. I used to be the vice president of League of Women Voters. I stopped doing that. I was also the vice president of Planned Parenthood locally. I became a master gardener. I myself and a colleague run a death cafe the third Friday of every month at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. And then I do free classes. We're going to talk about that a lot. So I just did that. I just did another one about advocating for yourself as a hospitalized patient. And this is a CCRD, a continuing care retirement community. And this is a little bit, some people, a lot of people here volunteer for Meals on Wheels. And we've talked about getting business cards. So when you go anywhere, when you are networking personally, professionally, or community, it's always good to have a stack of those. And there's something else called the Land of the Sky. The Land of the Sky Regional Council. That's our county government seat. And the Buncombe County Democratic Party and Democratic Women. And then the last type is legislation and press advocacy. So I call that getting in touch with your inner warrior about healthcare. So I'm involved in a coalition of people trying to figure out how we can invite HCA out of our 110-year-old not-for-profit that was bought by HCA, and now it's pretty awful. And so what's happened with that is they want to do press releases. So I volunteered to do some press releases, and I routinely talk with a few of the reporters. And then I'm probably going to make some appointments with legislators because I'm learning that they really don't know anything about this particular comment. Then there's your social media. Are you all Facebook people or your business Facebook? And there's also something called a Mountain Maladies Facebook group. And this was started by a local man here. His name is Will Overfelt. And he is got 4 master's degrees, and he works with children on the school systems here in Buncombe County who have severe behavioral difficulties, or they're ADD or ADHD. And His father died suddenly at Mission Hospital, so he decided to create a community group that's sort of like a container for the whole community to put their stories about what it was like to be an HCA, which is pretty terrible. But there's 15,000 people in this Facebook group. Talked a little bit about LinkedIn. And then, what are your personal passions and networking? So for me, I love concerts. I love outdoors. I'm a master gardener. I used to sing. I love doing death cafes. I'm a member of the Arboretum. I'm a member of the Biltmore House. I love playing the ukulele, and I love working in the garden. So what are your passions? Is it cooking or music or piano or gardening or riding Harley Davidsons or going to dog parks or doing crystal jewelry or selling nutritional products or whatever? And the reason I say all about these different types of networking, and about 3 years ago, I took a course at Ollie on hiking the Smoky Mountains National Park. It's about 2 hours from here in Asheville. So I carpooled with 4 women. And when you're in the car with people, they say, well, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And the driver of the car kept asking me a lot of questions about becoming an RN patient advocate. And then just this year, she called me up out of the blue and said, would you be my patient advocate? So I just think it's sort of like when you adopt a baby. So my ex-husband and I adopted a little girl in 1996. And North Carolina is a horrible place to adopt children because the law is that you can bring a child home, and on the 30th day, up to the 30th day, the birth mother can claim the child and take the child back. So we said, we are not going to adopt a child from here. We went to Texas. And you can advertise for birth parents in Texas, and the birth mother can advertise. So we found our birth mother. And when we were being interviewed with the social worker, she said this to us. She said, when you want to adopt a child, you tell everyone on earth that you want to adopt a child because you never know where those doors are going to take you. And it's the same about your business. You tell everybody on earth, your family, your friends, your business associates, your fellow colleagues, people in the drugstore or in the checkout counter, you tell everybody what you're doing, and you'll be surprised about what comes back from that. So if you're doing what you love and you follow your passion, the light of your soul is going to shine through. So what we're going to do now is, I think actually I'm going to finish telling you about giving free classes. The number one way that I have gained people as clients is to offer free classes. I cannot believe how many people sign up for me with me after I give a class. This is an example of our first cohort becoming an informed consumer advocate for healthcare. And I just told everyone around that we only had 4 people starting, but that's how it is. So where should you offer to give free classes, and what would you like to teach? So now we're going to do a breakout group. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And so what we're going to do is you have 2 tasks to do. You have to do a task to figure out maybe 3 places where you can network, or maybe you already do 3. So is it personal, professional, community, business, fun? And secondly, what class could you teach for free? You don't have to say where, but what class could you teach for free? All of you are extremely educated nurses. You're here in this class and you have years and years and years of experience. So you have topics deeply inside you that you might not even remember. Like I have a good friend who's 80 years old and she works at one of our local skill facilities. She actually doesn't work there. She's a resident. And she was watching the nursing staff do blood pressures and she was appalled because they weren't doing it right. So she decided to do a class on blood pressures. And now she's teaming up with nursing students from a local university to teach nursing students how to do blood pressures correctly. So we have so many topics in us. What do you have in you? So we only have, let's see, Luann's not here yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to just do 3 groups of 2. Does that sound okay to you guys? And let's see, why don't we say we're going to give you 10 minutes. So each person has 5 minutes. So you get to say 3 things where you can tell people about your work, where your upcoming work, or your private practice. What are your favorite networking places? Are they community? Are they professional? Are they business? Are they community? And if you were going to teach one class, where would it be? And we're not talking an 8-hour class. We're not talking a 4-hour class. We're talking as little as 30 minutes. Where could you give a class? Okay. Questions about that? Okay. So does 3 groups of 2 work? Does that work okay? Okay.
I've got it ready here, Karen, unless you do.
You go ahead, Mark. I love it when you say you're ready.
And I'm gonna let the participants choose the room. We'll try this feature and see how that works.
Okay.
So we go 3, 2, 1.
So it's like it's 7:30. We'll come back at 7:40.
I created 3 rooms. All 6 of you have not joined. You get to choose room 1, 2, or 3. So likely somebody's got to choose a room, and you get to decide. Sabrina's in room 3.
What the heck? Where am I choosing a room? Oh, breakout rooms down at the bottom.
Matthew's in
How are
room
they-
1.
How are you going to keep them from like having 3 or 4 people in one room?
It's a self. I mean, we're a small enough group, so you get to
Okay.
self-select.
Okay, gotcha. Of I did a class on the perils of Medicare Advantage plans. And I had about 30 people who came to that, and they were all elders. And a lot of them had already had Medicare Advantage plans, and they had already had debacles. So that's just another idea for you all.
So
Go
I
ahead.
want to chime in and just tell Liz that there's a huge need for that. I had to go through and see about doing FMLA papers, for me helping to take care of my dad. And it was a telephone prompt, and I had 15 prompts that I had to go through to get to where I needed to be. And that was just for FMLA papers. There was a prompt where you could find out about your benefits, or you could find out about doing a new claim, or you could clock in, or you could clock out, or you could, talk about a conflict. And I'm just like and she said, well, how can I help you? I'm like, well, first of all, this automated thing is the worst I've ever had. And it took me 12 minutes to get through all that. And so by that time I was just really pissed off. But anyway, Liz, that's definitely needed. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all for all your suggestions, and be thinking if you'd like to give a class between now and July 31st, we can make it happen. So, and thank you for all your ideas about networking. So I'm only going to, the last section of this particular class is going to be on your forms for RN Patient Advocacy. So I might just do 2 and then stop at 10 after. So you have a 5-minute break when Jeremy starts. So I'm going to go ahead and share these forms real fast to you. I may not share them fast, but let's see. Okay. So again, free classes. Churches are another place to do free classes, by the way, and bars. So these are the forms. And so I'm going to tell you about 7 major forms. If I don't get through this, I'll just do some of this next week. But you got to have an RN patient advocate agreement. You need to have some kind of intake form. A geriatric assessment form is fabulous. A holistic assessment form is also fabulous. An authorization for disclosure of healthcare information, especially for a patient that's going to go to one of your local hospitals. A do not resuscitate form and a MOS form. So I think I'm gonna, and then just to be thinking about what kind of practice do you want to start, and that kind of determines the kind of forms you're going to want. But so I'm going to just start by talking about the Holistic RN Patient Advocacy Agreement. I probably revised this about 5 times in 8 years. And so it just, up here, it just talks about the coaching approach where I ask powerful questions, but there's a few things I really want to highlight, and they're in yellow. And that is to say, as registered nurses and RN patient advocates, we do not focus on diagnosis or treatment of mental disorders as defined by the American Psychiatric Association or provide legal, medical, financial, spiritual advice. The only exception is if we see an issue that's very harmful for the patient, I tell them that I might have to report you for, self-harm or something. And the other topic that comes up over and over again is my company is not a staffing agency, but I can put you in touch with groups in town that do have staffing agencies. So people fall in love with you as an advocate, then they want you to spend 24/7 taking care of themselves or a family member. And then this is just some other things about I'm going to want to get all of their medical conditions in the last 1 to 5 years. I've learned I only want it for the last year. I asked for a physician progress note or a hospital progress note, and I want a copy of their power of attorney or their MOS form. And I want, I'm not going to probably do physical assessments, but I'm going to ask a lot about their history. That would be the geriatric assessments form. So the geriatric assessment form is pretty long, and it's about 18 or 19 pages. It's got a huge font. Here it looks kind of tiny, but it's built for older people. And this, for example, is ear, eyes, and lungs. So you would check all this in hearts, etc. It's 13 pages, so I'm not going to go through this. Sabrina, did you have a question?
I did, but I was waiting patiently.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask, like I definitely see how all these forms could be beneficial, especially since some of the, legal forms that people need. I wanted to know your opinion, and I'm sorry if you've said this before and it just didn't register in my brain, but do you think there's a benefit to you being a notary as part of your advocacy? Or do you think that's just best to defer to somewhere else, or you don't feel like it's necessary?
I think there's a benefit. I actually had a nurse colleague who became a notary to help her patients. And here in Asheville, it is an 8-hour course on being a notary. And she said it was the most god-awful, boring thing she'd ever done in her life. And she was not going to renew, but she was going to keep it for a year. So that being said, I usually take people to my bank, which does free notaries, or their bank, which does free notaries. It's not that hard to do. So I didn't want to go to an 8-hour boring class. Sorry. Did that answer your question?
That totally answered my question. Thank you for your honesty.
Welcome. So then there's the soap and fan capes form. And this is the form that it's a 2-page form. And I use this to do the demographic part, the date of birth, social security number, home, cell, what allergies, who's your primary care, and who are your loved ones. So, and a lot of us older nurses know that SOAP stands for Subjective Objective Assessment Plan. So you'll see that there's a subjective here. What's your chief complaint? How can I help you? And I ask, who do you talk to every day? This is part of the objective part. This is the FANCAPE score that was developed by geriatric nurses. And it's fluids, aeration, nutrition, communication, cognition, activity, abilities, pain, elimination. And I think the last one is spirituality. So the first section is subjective. The second section is objective. There's social support, skin. And then C is, this is what I found after speaking to you today. How would you like me to help you? I found that your blood pressure is 200/100. I'm concerned because on your last physician visit, your serum creatinine was 1.5. And I'm wondering, do you have a primary care physician, or how would you like to proceed? I'm concerned about these. And then with the patient, you develop a plan. So I said to this patient, are you aware that you've had a high blood pressure? Yes, I am. What are some things going on with you? Are you taking any antihypertensive? No, I'm not. I'm scared. So we went through that. So I'm just giving you an example of how that 2-page form works. And then this is a document that you can follow up on the next time you talk with them or see them. So then there's something called an authorization for release of healthcare information. This is a generic form, but I usually use the one for the hospitals here. This is the gnarly HCA mission form that you need like a PhD to go through. So I usually sit with my patient and go through all these boxes. And the thing that really irritates the snot out of me is they write here, do not write in the margin. And then there's nowhere to ask for a paper copy. So I always write in the margin, I want a paper copy, because if you don't put that, they will give you a CD or a DVD to take home. And of course, how many of us have a CD or a DVD of the program that they're using? Plus, will it work in your computer? That makes me insane, just saying. And then Dr. Linda Bark created this great form. I love this. This is her holistic assessment, and it's got nutrition and cleansing. So there's 14 possible points for the nourishment, and there's 14 points for the cleansing. And I haven't included the other two domains, but I learned a lot about patients just looking at their holistic assessment. It kind of gives you some information that you wouldn't get from a geriatric assessment form. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop. We'll do these next week, but questions about that, any of that? So what I'm going to do is send you all these forms. You all don't have to use these forms, but I'm just going to give them to you maybe as a baseline for you to commandeer them and make them your own. But choosing forms to use has been a pain. Yes, Matthew.
So that last form, we have permission to use that? I saw a copyright
Yes,
on.
yes. Linda gleefully says everybody in this class can always use this form. You
Okay, that's-
have perpetual approval, and she wants you to use it, and she's proud of it. It's a wonderful form. Any other questions before we go to break? Oh, so your homework next week, I'm going to give you the geriatric assessment form, and I want you to use it on yourself, okay? So you will go through these 14 pages. The font's pretty big, so that's good news, but what is it going to be like for you? And in nursing school, our instructors always said, you have to taste this medicine and you have to know what this is like. So you're going to get to taste the medicine of the geriatric assessment form. Okay. All right. Questions before we go to break? I'll be sending you all of these probably tomorrow by email. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go on break and I'll see you back at 8:10 and I will introduce Jeremy Noble. Okay.
Wait, 8:10? Isn't 8:10 like now?
I think he sent me a message saying he was coming in at 8:15. So he said, I think I can only talk for 45 minutes because he's tired. So I said, okay.
You want us back in 5 minutes?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. Okay. See you in a moment. Bye. So Jeremy's just not here yet. So we'll wait a minute. So I'll tell you a story about Jeremy while we wait. Jeremy, I heard him speak at our local American Holistic Nurse Association meeting, and he's a phenomenal human being because he became an RN and then well, before that, he was like, he did all this work, I think, in the Army with battleground training and doing all kinds of things I think he was in the Army in critical care. And then he worked in critical care for a long time in hospitals. And then he became enlightened about he did not want to be dealing with death and dying and so much heartache as it was. He was feeling the need to be a healer. So he chose to become an acupuncturist. We have a big school here in Asheville that was started by a woman named Sissy Majabi, and it's called Taoist Traditions Acupuncture. And that's where Jeremy went. So it's a very, very rigorous program. I think it goes on for 4 years. And so the wonderful thing about him, he's my acupuncturist. The wonderful thing he does is when I go to an acupuncturist, I want to know what in the world, what is this? When you are touching my pulse, there's 4 of them. What is it telling you? Okay, so why are you sticking the needle in over here versus over here? And why does this needle work? And why does that hurt? And why should it hurt? And so he will stop and answer all my questions. And I said, I think I really like that because when I usually go to acupuncture, my acupuncturists do not take the time to answer questions. He said, Karen, the reason they don't take time to answer your questions, they're focusing on what they're doing with you and they don't have a lot of time, but I know how your mind works, so I'm going to answer your questions. So I really, really enjoy his ability to do that. And it's 8:18, so I'm going to give him a holler. Let's see. There he is. Okay. Here he comes. Here he comes. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. Signing in. Jeremy. Jeremy, are you coming in? Jeremy, are you there?
Yes, I'm
wait.
just having a lot of good time with my computer.
Well, welcome to the club. We're so happy to have you.
Hi, everybody.
This is Jeremy Noble, y'all. He lives here in Asheville. And if you can just take a moment to go around the room and introduce yourself. Say what your first name is, where do you live, and why are you taking this course? So Matthew, go ahead.
Hi, Jeremy. My name is Matthew Moody, and I'm a nurse practitioner in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm taking this course just because I felt like I had kind of scanned over patient advocacy, which is what nursing was all about in the first place. And it was just time for me to go back and do kind of a deep dive into it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa, what about you?
Hi, I'm Lisa. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. I'm from all over the state of Virginia, Chesterfield, where I live currently. I'm taking this course because I want to be able to get our nurses and our patients in sync with one another.
Great. Great.
Thank you. Okay, Liz, what about you?
I am Liz. I live in Colorado, but I'm currently in New Hampshire. And yeah, I just want to help people navigate the healthcare system. It's confusing and chaotic out there.
Yes,
Try
it
to
is.
make it easy.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sabrina.
I'm Sabrina. I am in North Central Arkansas, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I have a lot of people in my community that kind of get stuck in limbo, and don't really understand what's going on with the medical system. And I feel like they get lost to follow up and some other things. So I am trying to help combine resources and kind of be a connecting factor for those people so we can get them back on board.
Great.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I am Jennifer Camacho. I am in Richmond, Virginia, or North Chesterfield. Lisa and I work together and don't live too far away from each other. I am taking this class because I want to bridge the gap between healthcare, you know, and the 5 minutes that the doctor gets to spend with the patient, and then the patient comes out with 50 million questions, but they don't have time because they've got to get to the next patient. I want to bridge that gap and help people take better care and or understand the system better.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
Sonia.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sonia Frazier. I am Choctaw Chickasaw, and I live in the Indian Territory of Oklahoma. I'm taking this class because I work for Indian Health Services and in the process of creating a spiritual clinic for our patients, which are primarily Indigenous patients.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And Mark.
I'm Mark Rivasi. I do business services in Western North Carolina, including technology support for Karen and the community.
All right. Have you been on the call before when I talked? You look familiar.
Yes.
Don't be disappointed if I play the greatest hits again, okay?
So
No,
I'm gonna. You're up. Do you want me to introduce you, or can
I can do that. Here,
Okay.
Susan. I'm gonna turn on an extra light over here just to have, and then I'll get that.
Okay, good.
All right, maybe that helps a little bit. All right, so I'm Jeremy. My history pretty much goes back to leaving high school, going into the Navy, and becoming a battlefield medic. So my first 3 or so years was in the back of an ambulance doing ACLS stuff and feet to the fire. So I really got to see a lot really fast. And I was transferred to work with the Marines for a couple years. So that was another level of doing battlefield medic stuff. They pretty much taught you how to do everything you needed to do in the middle of nowhere. And so it was crazy to learn venous cut downs and chest tubes and all the things that you might need if you were stuck, basically. But I didn't see myself staying in the military. I didn't see myself staying in doing paramedic because I felt that that wasn't really a huge, I didn't think there was a lot of opportunity for growth in that world. So went to nursing school outside of the Navy and ended up in the cardiac units and moved to the open heart surgery ICU for a number of years. And the last, I think 5 years was also doing open heart surgery with heart transplants. And last year was a lot of busy work, and it was really hard on me after a while. Like a lot of you understand that. It was very taxing. And the segue was that when I went to my doctor and said, my job is really getting to me, I can't sleep, I'm always anxious and all of this, naturally he offered what he offers, which you could guess was probably like Xanax and Zoloft and such, whatever the most popular sleep med of the time was, And I saw so many, as we all do, saw so many people on so many medications in the hospital that really didn't seem to be able to live without them, right? And we understand more now about that with Xanax and such, how addictive it is to the central nervous system. But I want to give something else a try, and I think I just Googled acupuncture. I'd always been curious, and I got 3 treatments from a practitioner in Charleston, South Carolina, and I felt huge shifts, and I felt very different. I felt like my response to stress changed, and it's probably something that needed to happen for a while, especially with the history of critical care. You don't know the nervous system you don't realize the nervous system in the car you're driving, in your vehicle, in your body, until someone turns it off for a while and gives you a reset. And all of a sudden you're responding to the world a little differently. The world hasn't changed, but what did? Your response to it did. And I sent a few people, friends and family, for different things, knee pain, back pain, such and such, even infertility. And they kept coming back with great results. So I started getting more regular treatment from a community clinic. I loved the accessibility. I loved that the practitioners seemed to be looking through me as if they were seeing something I didn't even know existed. And I was feeling, improvements in lots of different areas. So when I really hit a wall as a ICU nurse, I started looking for my options: chiropractic, MD, nurse practitioner, PA, and just to me, I just felt like I wanted a different approach altogether. And I stumbled upon a clinic in Asheville that I thought maybe I can come up here and get a job at an integrative medicine clinic, maybe as a nurse. But the first clinic I clicked on, the lead practitioner was a licensed acupuncturist. So, I follow her bio, and it leads to this school in Asheville. And I thought, I didn't think you could learn this in America. I had no idea. But I look into it more. It's a master's program, 4 years. And I called a couple nurses who were also had been through that program and were practicing in Asheville, and they loved what they were doing. They said the school's really hard, and just be prepared to not have a life for 4 years. And I would think I was approaching 35 years old, and I thought, well, after 4 years, what better thing could I have done at this time than to come out with a whole new vision, and approach for medicine. And I wanted to learn the oldest. I know that chiropractic's kind of an offshoot of Chinese medicine. There's a lot of overlap. Homeopathy is kind of an offshoot. Definitely integrative medicine these days, and naturopathy, but none of them just had like the whole package and 5,000 years of production, and fine tuning. That's how I looked at it. And so I quit everything down there, sold the house, moved up here. And I went to school, and for sure I did not have a life for 4 years or more, actually, because you get out and you got to start a practice too. Most likely. It's changing now. There's a lot more systems hiring acupuncturists, like even hospitals. But certainly when I got out in 2015, you either going to join a practice or you were going to start on your own from scratch. So I don't think I had a real break from 2011 till 2019, to be honest with you, when I finally went on my first vacation in a while. But it's different when you're doing something in a country that's not as normal. Of course, you got to kind of pay some prices, I guess, for that. At least that's how a lot of us took it. So nobody who goes to school did it because they wanted to get rich. I can tell you that. They did it all of our colleagues wanted to really deeply affect people in a lasting way. And it's just a fascinating system. It's endlessly fascinating. And certainly practitioners who've been doing it for 50 years will tell you they're learning all the time. Every day, something surprises them. Because sure, all the theory is all great, but every person that shows up, every time they show up, the way we're trained is they're a new person. You can't just assume that what you did last time is going to work this time, or that what they need today is the same. So you have to really develop this kind of stance where you're always ready to adjust. You can't really get stuck, and you can't just rest on your laurels, which, you know, that's actually great for everybody, because that means if a person comes to you during a full moon, frankly, their symptoms look different. They feel different. The treatment I'm going to give is going to be different. And that's not something we talk about very much. But the big difference is, first, the basis of Eastern views is that the body is ultimately the medicine. Your job is to specialize in normalcy, in homeostasis, and look and identify all the reasons they're not reaching their own homeostasis. So rather than take over or cover symptoms or take over the body by blocking this and blocking that, or, you know, overstimulating this and that, you're really looking to say, well, this person over here is really cold and kind of wet in their body. We would say cold and damp. And that's kind of their constitution. So every time it's cold and damp outside, their joints hurt worse, right? We all know that. We've heard that. Maybe their head feels heavier. Maybe they feel more depressed. What that really tells the practitioner is that in relationship to the surroundings, this person, their internal landscape is telling you that they're not warm enough and they're holding on to too much water. And why would that be important? Well, if someone calls me and they have a cold or a flu or pneumonia or something going on and they want help, just by knowing how their body usually runs, I've already eliminated half of the formulary of herbal formulas that I know to look for, because I'm not going to give a very cooling, hydrating formula of like a classical herbal formula to a person who's already cold and damp. I'm going to make them worse. It's probably going to turn into a deep pneumonia. Heck, it might even turn into sepsis. But if I have a person who tends to run like hot and dry all the time, they have a hard time staying hydrated. They might even have night sweats. They might be very easily agitated or overstimulated. I know already the categories I'm starting with, and those are very foundational. It's just step one. It's not enough to actually get success. It's just the beginning of understanding a person in relationship to themselves, their surroundings, their history, and this current disease, right? So on the relationship aspect, this person that's hot and dry, I'm going to seek a formula that is a little bit more geared toward clearing the heat and inflammation and rehydrating them, right? So on a very basic level, that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. And that's how we're already individualizing their care. And at the end of the day, each person needs what they need, all right? So I can't, if they have very, very poor digestion, and I get that from them saying, yeah, I have bloating often, or I have irritable bowel syndrome, or one or the other, then the next step is, I know what formula groups I'm looking at for this person, but now I have to determine a dose that fits them. So if their digestion's really weak and they always have issues with it, I may have to cut the dose in half. Or I may have to start really slow, and every time I talk to them, every day I talk to them, I may have to ramp it up a little bit until we hit a therapeutic dose. And I'll know we hit a therapeutic dose because their symptoms are coming down, right? So at the end of the day, it really is about relationship. And it goes so far as to say how we feel in the winter and the symptoms and the problems that we have in the winter are certainly going to be different than the symptoms and the problems we have in August, in the middle of the damp heat of summer, right? And that's part of the individualization, is also the hot, drier person is going to have a great time in winter. He doesn't mind it being cold outside. He'll walk outside in a t-shirt. But the person who's cold and damp, they have loose stools, they have weak knees. These are patterns that we see across the board in humanity. They're just the way the body works. And the good thing is we have that track record of physicians for thousands of years seeing the same patterns, commenting on them, commenting on their treatments that worked. Some of the treatments that we replicate on a daily basis, I can tell you, were written down in some cases 1100 AD. But I give the same treatment today and it still does the same thing, especially if I do my job right, as I diagnose right, I see the patterns, and I know how to treat this person today. But I'm really borrowing from everybody before me, right? And so are all my colleagues. And how different does that sound than what we are taught? Pretty much everybody gets antibiotics and steroids. Well, what's the 20, 30-year plan on that? You think, is overstimulating their adrenals for 2 weeks and then dropping it off and then they have fatigue for 2 months? Is that really going to make their next 20 years be wonderful? Or constantly knocking out their gut biome with antibiotics, is that really going to make them stronger in 20 years when they're no longer making serotonin? They're no longer making immune globulins that fight inflammation. And basically right now in America, that's everybody. Everybody shows up with erect small intestine, no gut flora, rampant inflammation everywhere, barely drink water, barely eats fiber, too many poor oils like seed oils, so those are inflammatory, too much stress, too much Wi-Fi, too much Bluetooth, and just too much to do. So everybody's just burning. They really are burning out. And they come to you, they don't know what they need. Of course they don't. I mean, it's a very big picture that you're going to look at. What you really can hope to do, though, is start by what did they come in with today? They tell us that in school. I mean, there's all this theory, and yes, you can diagnose their pulses and look at their tongue for clues and get their symptoms, but you have to come back every time to what are they asking for today? Because if you're not hitting those targets, it doesn't matter how you see the trajectory to help them for the next decade or so, if they were willing to work with you for that long. But they still need to know, they still need help today, right? Of course, that's what you need. If you have a headache, right? So, or if you have abdominal pain. So it's fascinating, and it's a very beautiful vision for health. And I'd like to share a PowerPoint, if you will, to let you see some of these things. And before I go any further, does anybody have any questions or experiences with Eastern medicine that they'd like to share?
Jeremy, will you get into evaluating pulses sometime?
I
think
will
Matthew,
actually have a slide for that.
great. Matthew has a question also.
Sure.
Oh, Matthew, I think you're muted.
Thanks. This is just really fascinating for me because I work in a holistic clinic. I'm the only Western medicine provider there. Everyone else is a super high-end, very, very successful acupuncturist. And we've never stopped to talk about how or what or why they do what they do. So for me, this is very helpful. I'm just sitting here texting with them, telling them like we've got to have a chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So thank you.
Yeah, and I think I learned something. When I went to my first acupuncturist back in Charleston, he didn't say very much at all, but he worked wonders, and he only used a few points. I got exactly what I came for. Some anxiety control and some sleep help, right? And I realized not only was there possibly a language barrier, but I think if you've been practicing 20, 30 years, one thing that you know for sure about Chinese medicine is there is so much to know and so much theory just to get you started, that I think that the old timers just don't talk anymore, because they know for everything they explain, there's 3 more questions behind it. And if you really want to get in, assess, get your points in, give the person at least 30 minutes to really chill out, and then you're going to go outside and think, what can I offer? Maybe some dietary options, maybe some herbal formulas, maybe some qigong practices, maybe some breath work, even pressure points. I mean, it's endless what you can offer. you don't really want to be in the room the whole hour. Basically getting them brushed up on your first semester of school, right? But I do know which books to offer, because there's certain books we all read before school to get us started. And the other thing is, people don't mean to be, but I remember what it was like in our first semester of school. We were very hostile in a way. Like, I don't know if it was passive or what, but we were hostile to the practitioners, the teachers, because they're saying these things from a place of they've seen it and done it, right? We're coming from a place of, well, I still doubt what you're talking about. So the questions were kind of, pointed and almost, there was a little bit of an aggression to it, because people were just like, I feel like you're just telling us a bunch of crap, right? Because it's so different, right? So I think sometimes I always also have to feel out how open a person is and what level I could talk about. Sometimes we could talk about chi, which is really quantum physics and energy and all of its transformations, which is really the foundation of it all. But sometimes I'm just going to talk about blood flow and warmth. And if they're really into the science, we'll talk about mitochondria. But I mean, it's all just different ways to talk about the same thing, right? But yeah, if you ever want to pick their brain, just say, ask them if they need to charge you after a while, because it could go for days. We used to sit in lectures for 8 hours a day, 4 days a weekend, with a master who'd been doing this since he was 16, and he was probably in his 60s by the time we were sitting with him. And of course, the more he talked, the more questions we had. So, but we paid him a lot of money, so to do all that. Any
Well,
other
thanks.
questions before I?
No, I just appreciate it.
All right. Okay. I'm going to pull this up, and then I'll share my screen once it's up. And can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay. Am I yelling?
you're good.
Do I have voice modulation syndrome? That's what Will Ferrell had a sketch when he just kept yelling at everybody, and he just said, I have voice modulation syndrome. That was his pass. Okay, I'm going to share my screen there. Okay. So I kept my last name in my business name because it was adopted name a couple generations ago, and I thought it was a very good thing to honor the people who adopted my grandpa and gave him a good life. And so, yeah, I've been having fun with when I pull Zoom up, my clicking has changed. You see it's happening right now. It's like my cursor stops functioning. Maybe I can move you guys. No. I did this. I did a class last night. I did the same thing. I can't even see my cursor. Okay, maybe I'll try a spacebar. Maybe that'll help.
Another thing, if you need to, Jeremy, you could always send it to me and I could see if I could put it up, and you could say next if you want to.
That's true. Do you use Keynote?
No, I use PowerPoint. Do you use Keynote?
Yeah, it's just because I'm cheap now. I don't want to pay for
Okay.
the Microsoft suite anymore. Okay.
Okay, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's working with my cursor on the right, just with my. Oh, now it's working. Okay. Well, there's my little kitties. They're kind of yin and yang. I want to tell you a little bit about yin and yang. Not the kitties, that's not their names, but the black kitty was very watery and chill. We say watery when we're talking to other acupuncturists because that means like a person who goes with the flow, but can also really relax a lot and is fairly peaceful. And then the gray cat on the top I adopted, and she was very fiery, and she always wanted to fight when I first got her and all of that. So they kind of completed each other in a way. And I actually only got the gray cat because I was in school so much that the black kitty got really bored and started gaining a bunch of weight. So you may have hear people talk about traditional Chinese medicine, but the school I went to they're trying to bring back the classical Chinese medicine, and there is a difference, and there's so many styles of Chinese medicine that I can't fathom. But what the classics taught was thinking on your feet and basically thinking by principle is the point. So in traditional Chinese medicine, that was a communist construct of medicine. They needed a bunch of practitioners out across the country all at once. So they boiled down what used to be a 10-year apprenticeship with a master practitioner. That was the classical way, that you learned a little bit all the time over years and years and years with a master. And then you were able to start seeing clients on your own. But because of the shortage of practitioners across the country, partially of which they did to themselves, they actually killed practitioners that practiced this way 100 years ago, because the classics were very much trying to awaken people to be their best selves, to be their most activated, to be their own, frankly, self-actualized people. But communism didn't care about that. They just wanted workers in the field and in the factories. So, and they wanted babies, and they needed people to not have pain. So they got rid of all the classical folks. They told the youth that those people were old school and we want to be new school. So they put these folks in the field, in some cases just killed them. And it's a very sad chapter. But that's just one more reason, one more way that medicine almost didn't make it to America or to the New World. But the traditional Chinese medicine is what they boiled it down to almost like a 2-year associate's degree. And by doing that, they were like, okay, here are your symptoms and your patterns. Your pulses tell you this, your tongue shows you that. Here's the most common point prescription. So a couple points on this meridian and that meridian and the other. And the problem with that was because they weren't trained why those formulas were so effective for this headache or infertility. Then when it didn't work, they didn't know what to do. So they became very cookie cutter. And frankly, when traditional Chinese medicine landed in America in the 80s, that's what the schools were teaching, was TCM. Our teachers will tell you, the teachers I had in school will tell you that they all hit a wall after their back pain treatments, neck pains, headaches, infertility, menstrual cycle issues. They hit a wall with chronic disease and more complicated cases because of the limitations of TCM. So around the year 2000, the Sissy Majebi was the founder of the school I went to. She was about to quit the medicine as a practitioner after 20 years because she was bored. She was so predictable for her and she was over it. But she sat in on a lecture with someone who was trained in the classics, and it blew her mind. She had no idea that it could be so much more broad than what she was taught. And she was so impressed that that's when she decided to start a school here, because she thought that's what the next generation is going to do. They can't continue to just learn the TCM. They have to learn the classics. They have to learn how to think more critically, and they have to question everything. And that was really the difference. We question everything. And why that's so important is that you stop thinking like formulaically, like I'm told that these are the points and these are the formulas and this is the prescription. And you more think of, what do I see in the patterns? Does this herbal formula or these points reach those, the high points of that pattern, the roots of that pattern? And frankly, the formula that was told that it would be for this and for that, when you think that way and you are more critical, you find that that formula is not right for your person today. So you look more for which formula has the herbs that do the thing I need, rather than this formula is for headaches or this formula is for shoulder pain. It basically made you question everything more than the TCM did. So that's what, if you ever hear of classical Chinese medicine, really what they're saying is body, mind, spirit, and much more critical of yourself as a practitioner and of your treatments, and much more open to anything being possibly helpful, and not just following what people told you in school. Of course, acupuncture is one way to stimulate the nervous system, stimulate blood flow, they have found recently that one of the benefits is under the needle, wherever you've placed it, nitric oxide is produced at a high level. And why that's important is if we have good microbiome in our mouth and our nose, and we breathe a lot through our nose, we will produce nitric oxide, and nitric oxide will dilate our blood vessels. But often when there's pain in the wrist, or there's pain in the back, or in these areas that we're usually asked for help, it's usually cold and stagnant. So there isn't a lot of blood flow in the area. And the simple placing of that is to push those tissues out of the way, wake them up, encourage the body to get some healing modalities like anti-inflammatories, blood flow, lymphatic fluid, and turn these cells over. Get the body to treat this as a minor injury and turn it over so it's fresh and new. Because, cells and tissues that have all the resources they need, and the good blood is coming in with nourishment and the trash is leaving, those aren't areas that become diseased, right? So really what this method is partially for is redistributing resources. And it goes a lot further than that, but at the very basis, that's what it is. Now, we also know that the brain reacts by calming the limbic system, and that's the modulating system in the center of the brain between the frontal lobe and the monkey brain. And that's kind of the organizer that lets signals go from the frontal lobe to the monkey brain, to the medulla. And basically in a case like PTSD, someone has a thought of the trauma, it goes right past the limbic system and straight to the body, and they feel the body react as if it just happened. So every time they think about it, the body reacts as if it's just a straight freeway to that activation of the nervous system. But what they found in a functional MRI is when they placed a needle and then got what we would call got chi or da chi in the area, and that means basically like super awareness from the body, mind, and spirit. But when you've got that complete awareness at that area, they watched the limbic system go blue in the center of the brain. The group of brain sections in the middle went blue and was subdued. And there was an audible gasp in the room. This was a Duke University study. For some reason in 2015, I could find that video on YouTube, but I haven't been able to find it since 2018. I don't know why. But I think they expected to see absolutely nothing. And instead they were like, we've never seen that before. And so that was one of the hidden secrets, was that the limbic system is involved in this treatment. And that really is that relationship between you and the outside world. You're seeing the outside world, but how is it affecting your body? How is that allowing the signal to go to your body? And what you find is if someone gets in a car accident and you do one treatment, they'll say they think about it less and their body's more calm. The second treatment, they'll say they think about it even less, and when they think about the accident, their body doesn't respond at all. And then after the third treatment, especially if you're getting it, within a week or so of the accident, they'll tell you, I don't think about it much, and when I do, there's no body reaction. So what did you really do? You reset their relationship to the entire experience. A good note is there is a group called Acupuncturists Without Borders, and they go all around the world after mass casualty events and such, and they'll set up a tent, and all they do is these 5 points on the ear to elicit that response. And they will basically, with this very simple technique, very easy to use, nurses learn it all the time. Now I think they call it battlefield medic protocol, something like that. And the VA is doing it for their patients with pain in the hospital through the nurses. So they're basically doing these same protocols on the ear to talk directly to the brain. And they find that they basically stop PTSD in its tracks. Because think about it this way. You have the original event, and then over time you have the sequela. So the sequela would be, for instance, you're not sleeping anymore. Well, how does anybody feel 1, 2, 3 days later of not having sleep? It gets real rough. It gets crazy. You can start to see things, and your communication with the world changes, and your friends and family don't know you. And then a lot of people lose their appetite after traumas. So imagine now you're not sleeping, and now you're not ingesting nutrients. So your body's basically starving. So how are you going to make your serotonin and your melatonin? How are you going to make dopamine? How are you going to make these things? You're becoming a wreck, you know? And frankly, they treated most of our vets for the last, since Vietnam, they mostly treated them with Xanax and oxycodone and Prilosec. I swear that was like the top 3 things you'd see on their medication list for PTSD. And basically what it really meant, they just didn't see the picture. They didn't understand what was happening. So the best they could do is symptomatic control. But of course, those came with a cost too, because proton pump inhibitors, you only just go up on the dose until you just exhaust it. And you're actually creating a malabsorption syndrome because you're shutting off the acid, so you're not breaking down your food. And then there's addiction in barbiturates that we know about, Ativan and Xanax. And there's addiction in oxycodone. So what did we do? We took one problem and we created more on top of the original problem, right? And when you're studying Chinese medicine, it's a common phrase to call that latency. What that means is the problem that you had originally is now getting deeper and deeper and more entrained, and you're adding more and more problems on top. So if they, for instance, take 800 milligrams of Motrin twice a day, you had the original problem, but now you're starting to have liver and stomach damage, and maybe even potentially kidney damage, right? And at the same time, the problem is not being addressed at all. So it's actually getting worse, right? That would be called latency. And sometimes as we age, we lose the ability to keep those problems hidden. And they just all show up at once for some people. And that's when you'll see them in kind of a crisis. They can't control the pain, they can't control their sleep, they can't control their mood. And that's because the pathology is no longer able to be trapped and deep in the body like it was. Any questions on that? I know I cover a lot fast, don't I?
I had a question. So you were saying that there was a simple technique that nurses can do to
Yeah.
kind of counteract PTSD.
Sure.
If we want to learn about that or how to do that, where can we go for that?
I'm trying to think of what their acronym is at the VA, but it's like a battlefield auricular acupuncture, maybe. You can't quote me on that, but you can probably Google that, because that's the basic. It's basically what they're teaching medics in the field now to do these points to treat pain and reduce headaches so people can fight and go back to work and such, and reduce opioid use. That's the main point, really. But I think it's some kind of battlefield auricular protocol.
Acupuncture. That's BFA.
BFA?
Battlefield let's see. I just Google battlefield auricular acupuncture and
There you go.
battlefield. Yeah.
Another
Came
one
up.
is if you just go to the the Acupuncturists Without Borders, I believe they'll even offer training, because I mean, really, frankly, it's very straightforward. Starting an IV is harder, but I even think they train some non-medical folks, because you're not trying to be the diagnostician, you're not trying to treat the whole every organ or anything. You're just trying to create a basic parasympathetic nervous system response, and you want to get them out of fight or flight. And the secret about that is that every treatment you give elicits that parasympathetic response, and healing happens much faster when you're not in fight or flight. We know that because your blood flow is better, you're breathing better, everything works better when you're not in fight or flight, and you digest better. So it's a wonderful tool. And I think from the trajectory, I didn't know the VA was offering it on the floors, but the fact that I heard that last night made me hopeful that there's going to be more and more reach, because they love it. The nurses said that is administering that at the VA said they love it because they're just not giving the amount of pain meds that they used to. So that's perfect.
Okay, I found it. I'll post the link in our Zoom chat.
Sweet. So cupping is just one more technique that we might use. the idea is that my favorite analogy is that really good, healthy muscles are filet mignon. There's plenty of blood, they're very flexible. But when they don't get the water they need and they don't get stretched enough, they start to become adhesed, then the tissue becomes stuck together. And so it starts to head towards beef jerky, right? And that's not flexible, that's not functioning, and it's not going to feel good. So acupuncture is one way to break up those muscle fibers, but cupping is a little more broad. If you can see the amount of space it covers, a little more broad. And under an MRI, they show and they see that the levels of the fascia and the muscle and the sinew that are stuck together will lift and break free. And now, after you've done that, now the fascia can move fluids and regulate temperature and, you know, bring in blood and all of the good things. This person, you see the top cups closest to the head have like a fog in them. And that's something we could diagnose and say, oh, this person might be holding onto a little extra fluid in the upper body, because when you go ahead and put that pneumatic pressure, it pulls out fluid. The same thing I would say is the color of the skin tells you a lot too. So if I'm cupping somebody, it's not just a treatment, it's a diagnostic as well. So if they have very dark blue circles, what do you think that means? If you had to guess. Well, let's say venous stasis or blood stagnation in the muscle. And if it's blanche white, when you pull up, what do you think that might mean? There's no blood in the area. And so those are two different reasons why this person has pain. That's a differentiation and diagnosis. And that helps you understand how you're going to help this person, because the blanche white one means you better be giving herbs and prescribing a diet that's going to enrich their blood with vitamins and minerals and build it up. So maybe have them drink a cup of broth a day, or have them cook more of their meals with broths in it, so they can get the collagen, they can get the minerals, they can get the water to build some blood. And then the person with the stagnant blood, with the dark circles, that might take a whole week to heal. If they are open to an herbal formula, you're going to have what we would call blood movers, and those are going to be herbs that are known to, I mean, by today's standards, we might think of it more like Coumadin or something, but plenty of plants cause the blood to move a little quicker and clump less. So that would be something that you would be thinking. And so it's fascinating that it seems like we're doing just treatments, but we're actually also diagnosing. Oh my gosh, it became 9 o'clock so quick. How did that happen? Okay, I could show you just a piece of theory real quick that you might like. Okay, so right here, where envision this, if you're looking at things in balance and in relationship. Okay, on the yang side of that graphic, let's say you're in Charleston and you're running a marathon on a sunny, hot day, and you're pushing yourself really hard, you're very active, and then you fall out and you have heat stroke or even worse, right? In the basic theory of Chinese medicine, you're actually seeing a physics experiment in action. You're seeing that all of these extremes on the yang side deplete all the fluids and everything on the right side. And they would say that extreme yang has transformed into yin. So that is something that we look for. This is something that we are looking at when we're seeing, where did this disease come from? Where did this shoulder pain come from? So that person was a perfect example, and happens every year in Charleston because they do these 5Ks and these marathons in August, which is kind of ridiculous, but they're doing all the yang stuff. Too much activity, it's too hot, do that. And now another example of extreme yin becoming yang is, let's say I see someone with knee pain and I go and touch their knees and they're very cold. There's a bluish tint to them. There's almost sometimes even a mottled look to it. They're icing their knee because that's what they were told to do. They don't move very much. Maybe they're doing rest, ice, compression, elevation, right? After doing that long enough and not having any blood flow going under that knee and bringing in reinforcements and nourishment and taking away trash and lactic acid and metabolic waste, eventually that area starts to kind of foment and become very inflamed because it's no longer healthy tissue. The body is not engaged in that tissue at all under the kneecap or and nearby. So all of that cold, stagnant, tissue under and around the knee has now become hot and inflamed. So that's extreme yin becoming yang. Does that make sense? And that's just one more thing that you're thinking about of how to help this person. So I'm going to warm up their knees. We're going to create space under their kneecap. We're going to have them put heat on the knee when they're at home, because the body can fix inflammation if it has the blood going there, if it has the medicine coming from the small intestine, right? So these things are very different than what we're used to. And this is how the tools are just no different than tools you use for gardening. Sometimes you need a plow. That could be the muscle scraping, gua sha. Sometimes you need a little hand tool. That might be more like acupuncture. Sometimes you need more water on your garden, right? And sometimes you need some more yang, some more sun. And your goal is to see this person's disease in relationship to everything they've done and everything around them. So that time went really fast. I apologize. There's so much more I could tell you. But I hope that gave you some insight of what an acupuncturist is thinking. It is internal medicine, it's external medicine, it's chronic, it's acute, it's body, mind, spirit, and it's very living and it's very dynamic. So it's easy to think when we hear the word acupuncture, it's one thing, but it would be like calling a surgeon a scalpel technician. They're thinking about much more. And that's the kind of thing that when you ask your friends, that your colleagues that are acupuncturists, maybe that's the kind of thing that they'll point to as well. It's like, it's as big as you want it to be, like as much as you want to know, it's out there. Two books that are great to read, that one of them is an introductory book that everybody should pick up, and you can probably get it on Amazon for $12. It is called Between Heaven and Earth. Between Heaven and Earth. And that was written by a couple acupuncturists who understood that translating this is a big job. So the best thing people can do is read about some of this theory and application for themselves, because the reason we all love it, and we all go to school for it or go get the medicine, is because it all makes sense when we find out more about ourselves and our patterns, because you'll see them listed out and you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. I always have that. I didn't put that together that I had a pattern, So that's Between Heaven and Earth. And then a new one that's really awesome, that's only a year or so old, is called The Spark in the Machine. The Spark in the Machine. And what's awesome about that is, here's an acupuncturist in a lecture series, and he raises his hand and says to the practitioner that's leading the lecture, he says, has anybody tried to explain to the West Chinese medicine through embryology? And the practitioner, the teacher, says, I don't think so. Why would you say that? And he said, as the cells are forming and becoming more and more specialized, there's always spaces in between them. And wouldn't you know that as we grow up and become more and more specialized, there's now kind of leftover seams between the areas that were differentiated. And you can tell that just when you look at your hand and see that all the skin on the back of the hand and arm are much more tough and can be darker, but then there's this line, and after that everything's much more soft and lighter. And that line happens to be the first meridian on the entire body, which is the lung channel. That's our first breath. It's the first one to activate when we come out of the womb. And it happens to be the first one on the circuit board. So he was saying, even the fascia around and the spaces around the organs, we have a name for that. And we use it a lot to move resources around the body, to get heat away from the heart, to get inflammation away from the lungs, and frankly, to warm up the digestive tract. Most of us have too much heat above the diaphragm, and it's not supposed to be there. The diaphragm, so above the diaphragm, the heart, the lungs, the head. And then usually we don't have enough energy in the vital organs, the digestive tract. So we use these spaces to actually redistribute these resources and bring heat back to the abdomen and clear the heat away from the lung and heart where it's a little bit too much for them. But he makes the case in The Spark in the Machine that it's the spaces around everything and these seams that we're working with to regulate the body. And I think it was the first time I'd ever heard it put that way. And I've already been studying and practicing since 2011. So if that's where it's going, that we're able to explain it better, then we could all understand what we're saying to each other, you know? And that's the best thing we could ever do, is refer to each other when needed. You know, there's times I need to refer to Western, but then there's a lot of things I can do that they don't know I can do, like treat a UTI. They wouldn't think, a practitioner wouldn't think I could do that, but we just don't have that open conversation. And I could do it safely and stop the antibiotic cycle. So it's things like that that we can just keep, you know, opening up to each other and be honest about the strengths and the limits of our medicines. And really the patients are the ones that we're here for, not biases or this is better or that's better, but just being honest about, we want people to do really well in the next couple decades of their life. We don't want to just keep covering up symptoms and actually injuring their major organs. So I think that might be as much as I could sum it up.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yay.
Can you stop sharing and we'll ask if anybody has questions before we close the class?
Steve.
Thank you.
I have more questions, but I'm fascinated by this topic because I was a little ignorant on the subject, and I'm not gonna lie and say otherwise. When you say acupuncture, I just think about poking people with needles, and wow, that sounds like it hurts. And that's about where I stop with that.
I get it.
This has been enlightening.
Yeah.
So thank you for this presentation, because it does spark my interest in a lot of these areas, and you seem down to earth.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's enlightened me. My first question for you, did you see the documentary? I found it on YouTube that some people recommended it to me. It's on fascia.
No, but that I would be interested in, and I would say that is the foundation of Eastern medicine, is fascia. When people are doing Tai Chi or Qigong, which was always recommended, it used to be said that you don't want people coming to your office. If you were the practitioner in a village, the goal was not to have patients coming in all the time. The goal was to teach them how to take care of themselves. So they're covering their neck in the winter. They're drinking warm teas and soups in the winter. They're not eating a bunch of iced beverages and just being careless about this. But they would really enforce Qigong. And what's interesting about that is all about fascia, because you're breathing in and dilating your blood vessels, but you're also moving joint spaces in a very, I would say, like conscious way, and becoming very aware of where you are in space. But the biggest thing about that is you're opening fascia. You're not allowing energy and blood and fluids to get stuck at your elbow, at your shoulder, because you're always hunched over and forward. You're not letting energy, blood, and fluids get stuck in the low back and hips because you're constantly leaning over a sink. You're sitting. They do a different kind of stance that has you sitting in your stance. So your low back is free. And things like that are all about fascia. It's all about communication, because that triple protein, and that's actually a big focus on the Spark in the Machine book.
That's what I was gonna say, is when you were talking about that, it
Yeah.
seemed like it overlapped, because the documentary was saying that our, you know, like in America, our medicine, they're taught, even when they study in medical school and have to deal with a cadaver, they're taught to throw all the fascia away because it's not important. it's not important in how they think about things. But like you were saying, when you realize that it's the network on everything connecting together, it
Right.
changes your perspective.
Right. And for instance, I use tuning forks sometimes to help patients' bodies calm down. And I put them strategically at just the base of the fork on points. But we understand that when we are doing a calming point on the hand here for the pericardium meridian, which goes up to the chest and wraps the heart, that sometimes when we have nausea and anxiety and a fast heart rate, that fascia is actually that pericardium web that's a sac for the heart. It's one of the most important groups of fascia that we talk to. But we know when there's anxiety or nausea or all this, that's an important discussion to have with the body to relax that. Because basically it's like you're bracing for an impact and you can't live like that forever. But that in itself is fascia, and that's a communication web. And what they find when you look at that spark in the machine, and they talk about how it relates to acupuncture points and treatments, is that we're really communicating from here to the heart predictably. And I have stopped irregular heart rhythms with techniques on those meridians. And it's not that it's something I created. It's just that a teacher taught me how to do it really. And you know, because it's kind of a neural network, but it's kind of a fluid network, and it's kind of a temperature regulator network. And the fact is, most people don't flex their fascia enough, and they don't eat to nourish it. So they're not getting the protein, the water, and the fiber balance that would actually make it happy. Because if it's a triple helix of protein, then it has to have the matrix for protein. But if you lost your ability to absorb nutrients, which is, in our vision, the small intestine is huge for drawing in and producing functional fluids, then how is your fascia not going to be dry? And I notice this when sometimes I start treating someone who is new to the system. Their body doesn't really respond that much, but after a few treatments, if I'm trying to draw heat and warmth out to an extremity, they'll feel it. It's almost as like you're getting the fascia engaged. So that's part of that gardening aspect. You see what's missing. You see that they're not regulating heat and temperature in their torso, and you're going to say, well, we're going to go ahead and assist that until the body picks it up and takes over, because it's forgotten, you know?
And when you talk about all that and you talk about kind of like pulling energy or heat out, I'm reminded of my friend who's a Reiki healer. Do you feel like they overlap at all, or do you feel like that's two completely different things?
Well, in Chinese medicine, they call it Qigong, energy work. So however many names, and when I was a nurse, they called it healing touch. However many names you want to give it, nothing really is new under the sun. The techniques might be different. We might be getting some high-tech instruments to replicate some of what they used to do with acupuncture and heat and stretching and such. But the funny thing about practicing in ancient medicine is everything that comes out that's supposed to be the latest greatest like knowledge, whether it's leaky gut or the fact that our DNA can change or fascia, or like, it's all been there, except there's a vision for how to put it all together, and there was no shortcut to knowing all that or to applying it to each person and each scenario per hour or per half hour session all day long in every season. You know what I mean? Like, it is a work of, you've already seen 350 patients in school before you ever get your degree or get your license, because it's not easy to replicate and reach everybody the first time or the 10th time, you know, over the years and years you practice. It's a really challenging thing to be good at, really. But that's why, you know, you just keep learning and you keep getting better and challenging yourself to make your skills more and more, you know, fine-tuned.
Well, it seems like you've done good on the journey. So thank you
I'll talk to you in 20 years, so we'll see about that.
Fair enough. I'll set my alarm.
Yeah.
Oh, here they are. Here they are. They're coming back. Okay.
Okay.
Well, sorry about that, you all. Did you all get knocked out?
Couple
No,
people.
we're fine. It was just you guys. I just
Yeah.
wanted to say, Jeremy, thank you so much. You explained a whole lot more about my world. And
Yeah.
I'm an ex-psych nurse at the VA, and I was the doctor at the men's prison in Santa Fe before I
Yeah.
left there to go into regenerative medicine. And I have a lot of questions to ask. You know what? I finally realized where my trepidation has been, being in this new practice, because it's all women. They're all acupuncturists. They're all highly successful. I just feel like a bull in a china shop doing Western medicine in there. And I've got to, which is funny because I am a tourist, but I, they want me there. I just need to figure out how to augment their practice.
Yeah.
They brought me in.
It's tough. I don't know how I could go back to the hospital with this and not be a bull and have it in reverse, because there's just so many things that I would say, oh, there's a quick fix for this. And well, that's not sanctioned. You can't just do that. But I would say also good news is I know that the VA hires acupuncturists. I know that I'm almost in network to receive them in my own clinic, be sent to me. I know
We are. Yeah.
the indigenous
That's-
hospitals now in Cherokee, here in North Carolina, they hired their first acupuncturist, and they want that too because they want My favorite thing is that the systems that are mostly tax funded are the ones that want effective treatments that don't cause another problem and is relatively inexpensive, and it fits the bill on all of those levels. And pretty much once people hear really what's behind it, I mean, it's hard not to be on board with that, because it's the people's medicine. It's not exclusive. It used to be, easy to access. I will say that if you want to look at a quick video, I shared last night, but there's a quick 2-minute video on an ER in Minnesota that has an acupuncture school nearby their hospital, and they now have an acupuncturist on staff in the ER, and you get to see her treat a patient for anxiety and neck pain, which we all know what that normally would look like and what they would normally offer, maybe some muscle relaxers and an x-ray and all this stuff. And the patient loved it, and they just consider it a service. It's not even an extra charge. It's just a service offered like you would offer like a psych nurse liaison or something.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So that's
Thank
cool.
you.
And the
Thank you.
last thing, there's videos of them using acupuncture in Shanghai for anesthesia. So it's a lot bigger than we know. They basically override the nervous system, and the person is awake. President Nixon's crew in the 70s saw that when somebody in the news team had an appendix rupture, and the surgeon general at the time, President Nixon's doctor, witnessed the entire surgery, and the guy had no pain and he was awake, and they were feeding him oranges. And to this day, you can get an open heart surgery with an acupuncture anesthesia or chemical, and you just check a box, no big deal. And the person who gets the acupuncture anesthesia tends to leave the hospital 2 to 3 days sooner because they don't have to clear all the chemicals. And they were awake during the procedure. So I think we're just at the beginning of this becoming much more mainstream.
Where were
Thank
those
you, Jeremy.
videos? You said we
YouTube.
could watch them. I'm trying to watch them. I got homework.
YouTube.
So thank you,
YouTube,
Jeremy.
Minnesota ER acupuncture. Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
all. So can we do one word takeaway as we close down? So Matthew, what about you?
Mm. Well, my takeaway is I just realized I'm the big rock in my practice.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's going to be fun to go back in there next week and integrate myself a little bit gentler.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
get that between heaven and earth, and start looking through that. And I think your sensitivity to what they're doing and seeing will grow.
Sabrina, what's your one word
you.
takeaway?
I have to do it in one word. That's you telling me I talk too much. My one word takeaway is YouTube because I wrote down all my homework. Okay.
And what about you, Liz?
Appreciation.
Hey.
Thank you. And Lisa Seeds.
Uh, It's hard to say in one word, but thought provoking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jennifer,
I'm gonna go with awe-inspiring. That's kind of 2 words.
Yeah.
that
But if you put a
works.
dash between them, it's one. Okay.
Thank you. And Sonia,
Amazing.
Nice.
awesome. Thank you. Mark,
Just learning. It's a topic I don't know a lot of, so thank you.
Yeah.
and
Yep.
mine is thank you. And you did a great job. Wonderful. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right,
So,
everybody. See you next time.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Good night. Okay, bye. Bye. Okay. Okay, Mark, another